they're sitting down and they're reading through some data and they're thinking deeply about what is next and what ought to be done. And then, hey, John, do you have a minute? All these interruptions. We would never dream of doing that, I don't think. But that's what we do with our own teams. And then we expect our own teams to move mountains, right?
Update your fantasy lineup, John.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this episode of the Framework Podcast. I'm your host, Ana Trujillo Limón, joined by my other host, Jamie Hopkins. Jamie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ana. Great to see you.
Great to see you, too. And we're excited to be in Nashville this week, and our guests are amazing. They're going to teach us a little bit about how to be superhuman. So Dr. Sahar Yousef and Professor Lucas Miller, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we had a lot of fun chatting before we even started recording, so we're about to have some good fun here on the episode. But we always kick off our good fun by asking people their first money memories. So what were your first money memories? And we'll start with you.
I like that question. Okay. I have a few, but I'm going to pick one that reminds me of my late father. I think I was 5, maybe 6 years old. So my dad was an equine veterinarian. Very niche job. He was basically a dentist for horses. He traveled a lot, and so when he would get ready to travel, he needed trail mix. That was his preferred food. He was on the road, always just wanted as much trail mix as possible. So he went to Trader Joe's, you get this, just in Costco-sized quantities, and I loved to make it. Mm-hmm. As a kid, for some reason, I just liked to categorize things and put things in boxes and bags, and so my dad saw this and went, all right, if you want to make some extra money, here's the deal. Every bag you make, you get a nickel, which was nothing at the time, but he never failed to remind me that back in his day, it was a nickel for a gallon of gasoline, and so you should just be grateful for it. And I swear I made, before every trip, 20 or 25 bags, barely enough to buy some candy from the local general store, but I loved it. And it just taught me that probably my first memory of there are things that people want, and if you see the opportunity or they're willing, then you can get work done, and that's when people give you money. It was nothing, but I still remember it for some reason before a first job or tutoring or anything like that, and it's a very fond memory of mine. I'm not sure how it's influenced how I believe, how I perceive money today or how it impacts me today, but it's the first memory that comes to mind.
That's awesome. I knew we were going to talk about horses today.
And snacks.
Horses
and snacks. Okay,
right.
We didn't get out of the first story without horses and snacks.
It immediately came into Yep. We came back around real fast.
Well, are you a categorizer today, though? Do you like to sort things, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
Yes.
Yes.
I like to be on time. I like to sort things. I like to align things in lines. And Oh, yeah.
Sometimes at home, I'll just randomly ask Lucas, what time do you think it is? He's just been in his own world for hours. And he just I'm not kidding.
5:12.
Sometimes it's to the minute, just has an internal sense. And I'm Middle Eastern. My sense of time has a standard deviation of 5 hours, give or take, plus or minus.
Potentially more.
I'm it's autumn and it's morning. That's about,
feeling
yes.
good.
Yeah, that's what's happening.
I love it. I'm similar, kindred to that.
Wait, so what time is it right now?
Right now?
Yeah.
I'm going to guess it's 12:53.
Ooh, it's 12:55. You were 2 minutes off, but that was pretty
still, that
good.
was impressive.
I think we're going to count that as a win because there is no clock here, and you've been at a conference speaking and walking around conference hall, so that's pretty impressive.
And across time zones, I thought it
And
was
you crossed the
2.
time zone and got it right. That is true.
Absolutely.
And actually, I could have been a minute off anyway, so I think you might have only been 1 minute off. Yeah, so I think we just got fact checked there that you were pretty much off.
So what you're saying is you're really good with nuts and time, money questionable.
We can say that.
Okay, all right. Getting some more insight. So tell us your first money memory.
Ooh, I don't even know if it's necessarily, it's, my first is definitely really young. And that's, my family owns a small Middle Eastern market, a grocery store. So it's a very, very, it's a tight ship. And so I grew up, my very first memories of money were very tactile and tangible. So I think early on, I had a very, very, very visceral and firm understanding that money moves, the transience of money, that like as in on a daily basis. I think some kids, I've like talked to a lot of friends about this, and they're like, I don't even know how much my parents made. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't really a concept, like how much things cost, like houses, rent, yada yada, all these like things. But I think actually I'm grateful for it. But on a daily basis, every night I would, I'm home after school. My dad would close up the shop and come home with a plastic bag of money. And guess what the job was for the kid? I sort. Because categorizing is like a big.
We figured it out.
So I would love, like being the banker in Monopoly, like that's my jam. So I would sit there, and then he'd just like drop off the bag and like go take a shower and like unwind, and I'd be like, yes. And then like coins, I'm just sorting the bills, I'm doing all the things, and it would be, once I got old enough past the sorting stage, then it was the count. And you have to be accurate, but really, like, I guess my first money memory is I had a sense that I was feeling my small version of the economy on a daily basis. It's almost like watching like the NASDAQ close over. It's just like I had a visceral sense of like yesterday's pile was bigger than today's pile. What does that mean? Or like, why am I noticing that the pile is always getting bigger? Or like smaller? And then my dad would say, well, it's starting to become the end of the month and people are like running out of money. So the pile will always get smaller as the end of the month approaches. And I'm just like, what? So it's like really, really early. I don't know. That's my first money memories.
That's
counting
amazing.
and sorting also.
And actually, you have a great currency memory. This is actually what you have. Is because like what you said is that like currency, the whole point is it's a current, it's always in motion. And you had that experience really early on. Because a lot of people don't see it move, right? Like you get some, but you don't really have the notion that it's like coming in and going out and getting larger and smaller, and it's almost like a wave. And yeah, so that was really interesting.
Yeah, no, I love that. But tell us about your origin story and your journey to becoming superhuman. I guess that could potentially take up the whole podcast. I know.
That
but
could take the whole podcast.
Let's try to keep it a little short.
I will take, yeah, and I'll just take a walk then.
Yeah, go ahead, Jimmy. No, I'm just kidding.
He's going to take a nap. No.
I need a nap.
Grab some snacks.
I can start off at least with the origin story of the lab and the research a little bit.
Absolutely.
And I think both Lucas and I have maybe different reasons of getting interested in our area of research in the first place. I think for me, I was a philosopher at first and then moved into cognitive neuroscience because some of the questions I was asking in philosophy of mind seemed untenable to answer staying within philosophy. So I had to quench sort of my curiosity by transitioning to really studying the brain, to come at consciousness and conscious experience. And that's sort of the origin story of at least my interest in this area of research. And then I became obsessed with how the brain changes and evolves. So the whole concept of neuroplasticity and how the brain can truly adapt. It's a dynamic system. So the same way that we can learn skills, I mean, those learning of skills actually are represented neurologically and they're measurable. We can watch it happen. And then, for me, I became very squarely focused on how can we help people like level up performance? Like, could it be possible to make superhumans? If we can learn skills, then surely we could learn how to learn, and then we'd be super learners. Or we could learn to focus better, for example. And so that's sort of the origin of, again, the ethos behind, I would say, what brought me to the research. And a lot of the research in the beginning, all of this started out in training programs, doing non-invasive training. So no drugs and no other invasive technologies, so no zapping brains or other fun stuff, which I'm all for and used to do. So like, not to say that that's not a great thing to do. But transitioning to non-invasive, it's the question really is, what can you do to make superhumans in a way that is non-invasive? Like, what can you teach people, and what adjustments could you make to your life and the way that you go about doing things to actually level up your cognitive performance, your productivity, all of those things?
So my path to neuroscience was somewhat circuitous. I initially went into college trying to become a mechanical engineer. I liked math and physics and thought I wanted to build rockets or cars or something from the future. I was awful at Legos as a kid. Absolutely awful. I should have known that was a bad path for me. So I switched very quickly, semester in, decided to go into computer science, which was and still is pretty popular and applied to many different industries. But then about midway through college, I decided, I'm in classes with thousands of people. Computer science is a huge major at Berkeley, and I wanted more attention. I wanted to be in smaller classes. I really wanted to get to know my instructors. And I went, okay, what am I really interested in? What have I always been interested in? And for me, it's the foundational questions of life. Why are we here? What's the meaning of life? What's the purpose? And for me, I've always had two different ways of exploring that. One is to go really big, to go outside of ourselves, to go to physics. Mm-hmm. Where does the universe come from? How does all this work? What does matter? And the other one is go inside. How does this work? How does this 3-pound mushy ball in between our ears work? Because it defines everything. Who we trust, what we pay attention to, our memories, our personality, it's all in here. So that's when I transitioned to neuroscience. And I got really into this type of work when I realized that all of the students that I saw doing pretty much as, they were the top of the class without sacrificing everything. They didn't sacrifice sleep or their social life. They had figured out how the brain works. They'd figured out different methods of how we learn best that, quite frankly, we weren't taught in school. If you think back to school, we were always taught what? Like, here's a subject this semester, here's what's on the test, but no one talks about how to learn, or today, how to work. And so I started getting really into research, decided to put a book together on the science of learning, and then ended up joining a research project led by Sahar, and then teaching and continuing to just pull research together and give it to the world, and here we are today.
That's awesome. When you were in, I guess, school, did you find any techniques that you were doing that were really harmful, like the opposite side? Like you personally? I mean, obviously there are a lot of ones you kind of hinted at, but how about you? Were you like, yeah.
Any techniques that were harmful? How do you mean?
Like, well, you mentioned like there were people that were sacrificing their entire sleep. And so, I mean, I had friends that just did all-nighters all the time. And you're kind of like, I feel like this is not a very good strategy. Or they were out partying all the time. Or like, what was your kryptonite one then, since we're...
I don't know if Lucas has one. He's
I don't-
very disciplined and
I
so
don't-
natural,
I
like
don't
one
know
of those
about that.
naturally healthy people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
mean, I
took
went out
first
and had-
fast food
Yeah.
like a few years ago. I had to like drag him. I was like, you need to try it once, and he's like, why?
Well, because you
oh
probably
my
improved
gosh.
something. Like you noticed somebody else that was doing something you admired and then adopted that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I went out and went to parties and all that, and my behavior's not perfect at all. I think one strategy that I adopted in high school, which I think a lot of us adopt, is just you reread stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You think, if I reread it, at some point it's going to get in there and then I'll know it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that just makes us really familiar with something.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that we've mastered it. So when you ask someone, hey, explain this concept, explain the supply-demand curve, or explain this, just having been exposed to it and seeing the graph and seeing words related to it is not the same as on command, from memory, you can explain it, the nuances. And so that's something that I think almost every student uses. It's the most popular method.
Mm-hmm.
It's also one of the least effective because it gives us this illusion of mastery when really we're just gaining more familiarity with the material.
So a couple of weeks ago, y'all did a live with Terry Shepard and Ryan Dietrich, and I tuned in, and I was telling you before, my mind was blown because you said not to have coffee first thing in the morning. And I told you I was going to ask this. And I wake up every morning, and the first thing I do is I drink water, and then I have a cup of coffee, and then I just, kind of enjoy what's going on. And but that's one of those detrimental habits, right? So let's talk about that a little bit and why that is.
So you heard this and you were like canceled immediately.
Okay, so I want to start by saying there's nothing wrong with coffee. Coffee is great.
No,
I'm a coffee drinker.
absolutely.
We're huge fans of coffee over here. But if you are curious about when the best time to have caffeine is, you want to get the most out of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the optimal, but it's not even a hard and fast rule. You can, if you love it and you really feel like you want that boost, you're more than welcome to have it first thing. But if you wanted to just optimize the boost you'd get from the caffeine,
Okay.
do it a little later.
And is it also true, maybe we don't know this, I'm just pulling out random things that I saw probably on TikTok, that you shouldn't consume a lot of sugar early in the morning either? So like I watched something that said orange juice is really bad, right? Because your body's already giving you that morning boost and you're just like throwing like stuff into it, right?
Oh, we're really going to get canceled.
Yeah.
You want to tell them about
I
juice?
don't want to unleash the sugar polemic, but juice is just not healthy, first off. It's mostly sugar water. It's very similar to,
Which is delicious.
which
It's
is delicious,
It's
for
delicious,
sure.
But treat it like a dessert because it is one. Yeah.
Good.
There's nothing slowing down the both the absorption
Yeah.
of that, of the glucose, the fructose, all of that. So the only things that slow down the actual metabolism of those sugars is
Protein and fat.
Yep.
Okay.
So a Snickers bar would be healthier for breakfast
Yeah,
than
so
a glass of orange juice.
I should drink
from
orange
a
juice.
glucose
Fats
monitoring
and-
perspective.
Yeah, orange juice and my cold pizza then is a good balance.
Now
So-
you're going to get canceled
No,
by that.
Honestly, but no. I'll say that.
That would
I'll
be
back
better.
you up. Better.
Yeah, better.
See?
Better.
And I
Better.
put blue cheese dressing on it too. How's that?
Yes. Okay. Enjoy.
I also
Each
ate,
his own.
It,
I
it
also
depends
ate-
how you define healthier.
Yeah.
It really defines how you
yeah.
apply it.
I also ate 4 hot
Also, a
dogs
little bit of
last night,
judgment for
and it
blue
gave me a
cheese on
stomach ache.
pizza.
So
What are you doing?
Why are you
I
not
posted a
putting-
photo of it.
He
I
did
got
post
really
a photo of it.
hungry. And I ate 4 hot dogs the end of the night last night. And no, I was not drinking. I don't drink very much anymore. But
So
the hot
that's good
dogs
for
were
your brain,
my
right? Not
dessert.
drinking, but maybe the hot dogs are a little bit different story.
Yes.
All right, I wanted to kind of get to like the optimal working and things that we're doing that are not good for us. They're not good for our, what we could maximizing, I guess is the best word to. But you mentioned like how we work a little bit all the time and we never kind of have that space anymore to like kind of, separate and be able to recharge. And we had a speaker yesterday kind of talking about that also. So can we talk a little bit about that and then also loop in the concept of this, digital hygiene and how that could help maximize the way we work and the way we operate and just the way we feel?
Sure. Do you want to start with digital hygiene first, and then
Sure.
we can talk about breaks and sort of
Yeah.
pulse pause
Awesome,
approach
sounds
to work?
good.
Yeah. So first focusing on getting more done and making the most out of the time we have in terms of production, right? So just sheer performance. One of the biggest, I will say, performance detractors that I see folks around the world making without really realizing it is having a bunch of stuff open and switching from one thing to another too frequently, not allowing themselves to actually sink in. And really what this ends up looking like, it can look quite benign. It's just you're sitting at your computer and you're going about your work, let's say, for example. But do you have your email open off to the side? Do you have chat open off to the side? Do you have notifications turned on? You might not be realizing it. The amount, I will say, of sheer time and energy wasted from every small interruption. And then you add on having a phone out on your desk and then that buzzing once in a while. And then people now are strapped up with Apple Watches and wearables, and now you're getting buzzes on your person, on your body. And then it's just, we're getting interruptions less than 90 every 90 seconds or less. So I usually like to position this in a different way. Let's imagine some of your listeners, those who are listening in right now, let's say you are charged with being the executive director of an entire massive grant, a global international grant that is trying to cure cancer by the end of next year. And we are gathering the best of the best minds in oncology, different forms of research, all together in a lab that you are going to run. You are going to run this office and this department, and the goal is to cure cancer by next year. How would you design the workflow for those minds? These scientists and these researchers, these people that you're expecting, it's like, listen, time's ticking. Money's a burning and time's a ticking. Like, are you coming up with the good ideas? Who's running this research? And then imagine, now start to think about how your team's workflow looks like, how your own workflow looks like. would you allow these amazing minds to be strapped up with Apple Watches, to have email and Slack open off to the side and be constantly pinged like every 5 minutes? It's like finally someone is sitting there and going like, okay, wait a minute. I think I'm about to have a really amazing idea. You know, they're having that, you know, hopefully an aha moment. Some idea is about to happen, or they're sitting down and they're reading through some data and they're thinking deeply about what is next and what ought to be done. And then, hey, John, do you have a minute? All these interruptions. We would never dream of doing that, I don't think. But that's what we do with our own teams. And then we like expect our own teams to like move mountains, right?
Update your fantasy lineup, John.
Exactly. Well, that's actually, you know what? Sports is another phenomenal way to look at it too. Like if you were running a fantasy football league, right? This is where I'm going to get like I'm going to butcher this because I'm very bad
You're
at
like,
bad at
almost
sports.
know it. Almost
I
know
am
it.
bad at sports. I'm like,
sports and car references.
yeah, I'm like, I love making them, and I just absolutely suck at having them be accurate in any way, shape,
Yes,
or
if you were
form.
playing baseball and you just
And
hit a
halftime
field
just
goal
happened.
and halftime happened,
Yeah,
You know the sport with
but
the
your
ball.
team's offsides,
Ball, yeah.
yeah.
you got to get them back on the second half of the field.
Or the third half. Of the
Third half. Those are my favorites.
third
What about the
halves,
third
There's
half?
definitely a sport that has like a
Overtime.
third half.
Yeah, overtime.
Yeah.
Soccer, hockey.
Third half.
I know what's going on.
Yeah, hockey's
love
got
it.
three
I'm
three
gonna adopt
quarters,
that.
which doesn't make sense either.
Yeah.
Okay, so sports.
But
Sports.
imagine you're running this fantasy football league and but like really running it. Maybe it's like not fantasy. It's like now just like an actual like league of a sport, right? And how would you treat your athletes? Like seriously, how would you run their lives and dictate like how much recovery? Which like Lucas is gonna talk about sustainability, avoiding burnout, taking breaks. I've been talking about like, okay, listen, you gotta hit it, right? How do you actually hit the ground running and perform? What does the training look like? Do you know what I'm not gonna do? I'm not gonna stand on the sidelines with, I'm gonna whip out some names. Steph Curry.
Oh.
Yeah.
Look at that, I know a name.
Did you
LeBron James.
Oh no. Were you ready?
I was-
Because
Say
it
his
is
name
it is one of 3 references we make on
done it
this
now.
show.
Really?
I went
Here
to
we
school.
go.
I went to
Really?
school with Steph.
No
So,
way.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm a Bay Area baby, so this is like
Yeah,
we're
I went to Davidson,
Curry.
and Steph was a freshman when I was a senior, and I do have Steph Curry stories, but we only knew him as Del Curry's kid when he first showed up because, you know,
Yeah.
his dad was famous, he was not, but now I tell people Del Curry, and they have no idea who that is. So, yeah.
Now
Yeah.
he's Steph Curry's dad.
No, he's Steph Curry's dad.
He is.
Yes.
So we talk about Steph Curry a lot.
We do.
And LeBron.
No, it's great. So
We
this is
like
perfect.
both.
It's like seriously, imagine if you were like training alongside Steph, and they were just like, by the way, you are now instead of is Nick Kerr still the coach?
Steve Kerr.
Steve
Oh,
Kerr.
I was
Yeah.
I was
We're
like
close.
on a
His
roll,
son's name is
and I
Nick.
got
His
confident.
son's name is Nick Kerr, who played basketball at Cal when I was there.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Okay, this is a
Yeah.
small world.
But you're not that far
Do I
off.
play
His son's
sports?
name is Nick.
I'm Michael Jordan.
Steve
is really
Kerr.
What's happening. No.
This is
All
pretty
ju-
accurate. I mean,
This is all pretty accurate.
Car is Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
we did go from football to basketball, so I'm not sure that you
Swing
knew any
away-
football
all
players.
all balls. However, if you're just managing some sort of sport, right? A human playing a sport,
With the ball.
right?
With
Yeah.
horses.
You would not think of all of the factors that you would not interrupt them like in the middle of their training with be like, oh, by the way, we just got to pull you in the middle of this game to like jump into a quick meeting really quick, or like you have 5 calls in the middle of like training today. It's like, what? No, you focus. It's like these. We know these are the best practices when all of a sudden we're talking about like an Olympic grade athlete, but for some reason we don't treat ourselves with that same level of, I would say honestly, respect. Like performative respect. So that's what I'm asking people to do. You are just as important.
I
as
love
Steph
that
Curry.
analogy. It's a really good one. Because most people know that, like, if you have sports practice or you go for a run, now I do run on the phone, so I'm really bad at that. But most people don't.
Yeah, Jamie texts while he runs. You didn't talk to him about
I
digital
do.
You
hygiene.
gotta run faster, so you can't do that.
I'm actually still pretty fast.
You gotta, do you have like a good spell check? You must have a good spell check.
Yeah. I run and text, and I run and do phone calls.
Yeah.
So almost every run I do now, I do a phone call on them. So
But yeah, so like that kind of stuff might lead to burnout. So that's what you were gonna talk about, right? Like
I
how
didn't
to
burn
avoid
out.
that.
Yeah.
I didn't say you did. I said that could lead to burnout.
well, it did.
Okay. So
They joke that you only burn out once, or at least hopefully. In so many cases, you have to experience something to know when it's going to come again. What are the signs? What are the symptoms so you can avoid it in the future? So it's a common thing that happens, and Now you have the awareness, and hopefully it doesn't happen again. So to Sahar's point earlier around really pushing everyone to embrace what it means to be human, how our minds work best, alluding to an earlier comment you made around, people are always constantly working, we're a little bit on, we're partially on. Personally, I find that that's a remnant of the Industrial Revolution, where we focus so much on, let's get these machines to be efficient. Let's get the most efficient factory as possible. And ideally, a factory that has the machines running all the time, 24/7, is a great factory. Humans don't work like that. We can't run 24/7. It'd be great if we could. A lot of employers, a lot of bosses would love their people to always be on, but we're not. We're not machines that can just plug into the wall and because we have power or electricity flowing, we're at 100%. That's just not the case. I guarantee that both of you, all of us here, we have energy dips throughout the day where you're just not as energetic, you're not as motivated. If I were to give you an intelligence test, you wouldn't score as highly. That's because we're human. We have these peaks, we have these dips. And also, we can't focus for that long without getting distracted. Now, a lot of folks, they just work 2, 3, 4, 5 hours straight, and then what happens at the end? They're exhausted. And they need a really long break to get back to being able to focus on something. Instead of doing that where we're just putting in hours, more hours, more hours, more hours, which is a remnant of if you run the machines more, you're going to get more widgets outputted. Focus more on the quality of the hours. An hour of really intense focus where you have a clear objective, you're only doing that, your phone's away, you're not multitasking, you're going to get so much more out of that than 5 hours of excessively multitasking, I'm partly distracted, jumping on a call, work. It's about the intensity and the focus versus the number of hours. And I think it's really important in a world that's moving more towards AI is going to automate everything it possibly can, to focus on what advantages humans have. And that is creativity, making good decisions. And that doesn't mean more hours. You can throw a lot of hours at a problem and have no useful insights. And then randomly in the shower, you figure out the solution. That's how creativity works. And so my big push to people is don't just assume that working more is better. Be intense, be focused when you're working. And then when you're not working, actually don't work. Don't just be passively scrolling through LinkedIn or your email saying, like, I'm taking a break. It's not a real break. Take a real break. Take your dog for a walk. Meditate. Take a nap. Go make a snack. Look at the window and just stare outside, get some perspective. A real break versus this feels very half-assed. Like we're half working, we're half taking a break. Just pick a lane. When you're working, you're working. When you're not, then really detach. And you will find that even just a minute or two of truly resting is way more effective than 20 minutes of light, passive stimulation that's kind of a break. It's not work, it's not that stressful, but you're still using your brain, so it's still getting exhausted over time.
Train hard, rest hard.
Love it.
Yeah.
So what are some actual techniques people who are listening could take and to create that focus and that space to have that?
So the method that we recommend is what we call in our lab, at least, a focus sprint, but you can call it whatever you want. We've had folks call it like power hour. Like there's some teams that did that kind of traditionally.
They do it together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's our focus sprint has a couple of very, very distinct rules associated. So there are very clear steps to doing an actual focus sprint. As our lab has done research on it, and it has been shown to be like the most efficient way of working while reducing the number of mistakes and also energy burn. So I'm a fan, but I'm biased. So that's the method I would, but really the ethos of the method is intentionality. As Lucas said, if you're working, you're working. That means you're not, if you're working on a document, that means you're not an email. Your phone is not next to you so that it can ping you. If you're getting a random text message, you're not going to see it, right? Mm-hmm. If you're getting an email during this work session, you're not going to see it, right? Because that's not what you're doing, is it? Somebody can't possibly come into your office and interrupt you, right? Because that's not relevant to the task at hand. So that might look like talking to the people in your office and being like, listen, let's do focus sprints together, or like I'm going to do them once in a while. So when you see that I have like my over-the-ear headphones on or something like that, like that's when you know that I'm like heads down and I am intensely training, right? In that moment or for that hour. And you've got, if you need to, turn your Wi-Fi off. But it's like, seriously, you're full screened, notifications off, or DND, phone out of sight, out of mind. If you have focus music that you like to listen to, go ahead and play that. Break down what you're going to work on. Imagine, again, going back to Steph Curry. I'm just going to keep whipping out this. Is like, let's go back. I just like drill down into where I like shouldn't be drilling, but this is welcome. Sorry.
It's memorable.
To my chaos. I'm like, great.
It's okay.
That's what we needed today. That's
This is what we needed today.
We could also pick Michael Phelps, because when you swim, you are very dialed in. There are almost no other distractions because all you can do is look at the bottom of the pool and you can't hear anything either. So it's a great
So
one.
also swam with Michael Phelps growing up.
Yeah,
Did you?
I did. That's it.
We had to
Something
get
Michael
those two
Phelps
stories
is
in.
famous for. If we can whip, this is actually maybe a good advice actually for some folks listening in today.
Awesome. Let's hear
Get
it.
yourself a hype song if you don't have one.
Oh, Sean
Yeah.
was just talking.
Everyone should have a hype song. I think Michael Phelps was famous for using Eminem, right, as his hype song. I'm a
he liked
DMX
Eminem
gal
and-
myself.
What's your hype song?
DMX.
Which one though?
X gon' give it to you.
That's classic. I love it.
Like it'll definitely get you pumped. It'll get you pumped. But
And I think he
it-
liked Lil
Right,
Wayne
I
a
know,
lot
seriously, rest
too.
in peace.
I think Michael's a big Lil Wayne fan, if I remember correctly too.
I mean,
Yeah.
who doesn't
Lucas,
love Lil Wayne?
what's your hype song?
Oh boy, that's tough.
You love
I
it.
mean, I like DMX as well. We've used that. R.I.P. for sure.
You
I
like a
use-
lot
oh,
of
God, what's
electronic.
the- what's
Do you
the-
guys
no, no.
want to sing a little bit of it together? You know.
So this is one
I think you
that I
should.
used for every single midterm and test and any sort of critical exam since, I don't know, 10 years ago. It is the instrumental version of the 300 anthem. The anthem from the movie
yeah.
300 where the
Yeah.
Spartans are going out to meet the Persians. And
We
before
don't
every
approve this movie, just by the way. The Persians don't approve. But carry on, Lucas.
riddled with historical inaccuracies, but it's a wonderful hype song.
Excellent score. Jamie, what's your hype song?
We're like, there were 2 Iranian keynote speakers at this year's Excel
Yeah.
conference. I'm like, we don't
I'm
approve
not
this
coming.
message.
I'm not
Get a
coming
new hype
on
song.
The dramatic
Get a
movie
new hype
and
song.
all of its errors.
Well, so when I was competing, it was not. I don't think it was this song then, but it at some point it became. I love Holy Diver, and that at some point became one of my favorite songs. But that was definitely not it in high school because I was not a really big Ronnie James Dio fan until I was in college, because that's the metal band I was in then is when I became a fan of him. So I'm trying to think back to what I listened to.
No, what's your hype song now?
Oh, No, I don't listen. Like, I listen to mostly Dave Matthews, and then French cooking music station on Pandora is my favorite station. So it's the opposite. It's to, like, calm me down. And so when I cook, I put on that. I don't understand anything. I know no French, so I don't understand anything they're singing, but I really love it.
This is
And
perfect.
yeah.
Which means it doesn't distract you.
No,
Yeah.
seriously, that's actually
it's just
critical
background
for
and-
focus music, by the
Yeah.
way.
That's what I was going to ask you guys about, like the binaural beats and like the different frequencies. Like that, I use that a lot to study, like, and to fall asleep. And what is your take on that and using that for focus?
You know, there's been some studies showing some positive benefits. My honest take on it is if it's working for you, I would hypothesize a great deal of the benefit from things like binaural beats would be, honestly, the association. Is that you've built up a cognitive association between a certain type of behavioral activity and a certain brain state, right? And that music,
Oh, okay. So
right?
Kind of like a placebo type of thing.
You know what? I
Which
actually,
is the placebo
no,
effect.
I wouldn't even call it a placebo because truly that is what any hype song is as well. It is an association that we have with it. I mean, I don't know. Then we'd call into question the reality of anything. It's really our perception that is our reality, is it not? Right. So if I perceive something as helping me focus and putting me into that state, then it is doing what it's supposed to be doing. The mechanisms of which might just be a little bit different. I think a lot of folks perhaps push that listening to a certain frequency changes the frequency of your brain waves, which then pushes you into a certain brain state, which then influences your behavior downstream. Okay, yeah, possibly. But for sure, you can absolutely build a cognitive association, right? With any kind of music, with French cookie music and winding down, right? So for example, I'm like curious, even if you're not cooking, if you were to put that, podcast on, or not podcast, if you were able to put that, playlist on, on the road, like you're in your hotel, like last night when you were eating those hot dogs, like if you put that on, you're not cooking in the hotel room, but like, were you still able to like physiologically like feel like you're winding down?
I put on like Pantera when I was that was a battle. You're like, I got 4 hot dogs. This is not calm down time. It's
Are
like
you
we're
training
going to
for
war.
like
We're just No, I actually did. I can't do it anymore. I did some competitive eating. Another thing you probably never know. I've won a couple hot wing eating competitions. But I'm a fast eater. So I couldn't win, like the hot dog eating contest. But if you had to do like 10 as fast as you could, I would be right up there with that one. So I'm very good at that type of eating. The one I probably could win is mayonnaise eating competition.
I was just about to bring that up and ask you if you've seen the mayo eating competition.
Yeah.
What is this?
I didn't want to show you because I thought it would gross you out. Because again, I told you Lucas is so healthy. Anyway, I'm so into these mayo eating competitions.
What is this?
Which
You
don't
just
even
have
worry
a
about
jar
it.
and
And you just
Well, okay,
eat.
no, because it depends on your strategy, right? Tell them about the strategies.
Well, there's a bunch of different strategies, but like, so I got really in, like, I don't just eat mayonnaise by itself.
Don't lie.
I don't.
Just competitive.
But I love mayonnaise. So I do a lot of weird things with mayonnaise. Like I do eat
lovely.
just slices of cheese with mayonnaise on it. So when I at night, if I'm still hungry, I will go cut. I have big blocks of cheddar cheese and I just cut it and I put mayonnaise on it. And I think it came from like we ate a lot of tuna and we made like tuna salad when I was a kid. It was like a very like thing, and so then I would just like always eat the mayonnaise that was left over off the spoon instead of washing it and put it in the dishwasher. And after like 20 years of doing that, like I can just eat mayonnaise by the spoonful, which is not super healthy, but I have no problem. Like I can totally, and I did in college on some like dare stuff, just eat entire containers of mayonnaise, and I can do that in like a minute. Like I can pretty much just knock it down.
Wow.
But this is pretty useless skill sets now later in life. I have not in like at least 15 years had to eat a jar of mayonnaise for any given purpose. But I've
Now
also
people
put
can ask you to.
I put mayonnaise. So
Now we know.
And I've done some things with food to raise money. So yeah, we did. Remember a couple years ago when I did all the ketchup stuff? I also love ketchup, and then the other guy started doing it. I was putting ketchup in coffee
No.
and drinking it, and then other people started putting ketchup
Like
on
stirring
stuff.
it in and everything.
Yeah,
Like, you're just not
yeah.
like not a
And
dollop down
the
the bottom.
football
big
player
chunk.
just got there's a football player who is it Mahomes? No, it's a college player just got an NIL deal from Heinz because he drinks his coffee with ketchup.
Interesting.
So yeah, I just saw that. We went really far off
We went
topic,
really
but
far off topic. But
it's
yeah,
still
coffee. We started with coffee. We're ending with coffee.
and the songs and what we do with them, and it was pretty good.
Yeah.
I'm happy with all of that.
Okay.
It was really good content. No practical
Hey,
application.
managing and maintaining your energy throughout the day, though, we can whip this back around. I can weave this back around.
Mayonnaise and ketchup,
Like a
quick
cheese
sugar.
mayo, technically speaking, not a lot of added sugar, and you're going in with like a healthy amount of fat and some protein. So
There you go.
good on you.
Yeah.
Bringing it back to the focus music part, binaural beats can totally work, but other types of music can also work as long as you build that association and keep that clean and clear. If that's your focus playlist, you don't want to listen to that music when you're trying to go to sleep or in the gym. You just want to keep it for that use case. And also, in general, you want the music to have either no lyrics or lyrics in a language you don't understand. So that's where the French works.
There you go.
So any instrumental or video game or movie soundtracks, it can all work, just like binaural beats, which seems to have some research behind it, but it's questionable whether their theories are actually accurate.
That's why I don't listen to music while I run too.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. I don't know if there's actual research around that one, but my theory was always that when the beats and rhythms change, you will adjust to that while running. And
You
even
do.
if you
Yeah,
don't,
you do.
you will try to stop yourself, which takes a lot more energy. So like in marathon, no good marathon runner listens to music while they train or run. And I don't either.
I do because I'm not a good runner. So I like to enjoy my.
But maybe
my
if you
tunes.
didn't, you would be better. And that's how you become a superhuman runner. Okay?
Okay.
There we go.
So just a few more questions. I wanted to be mindful of your time. We didn't get around to the horses, but maybe
It's
another
okay.
episode we'll invite you back if you're interested. But you talked about the role of questioning biases and how that can lead to more disciplined processes and things like that. I just wanted to dive into that real quick, and then one more question, and then we'll let y'all go.
Yeah. So you mean questioning?
Like our own biases about, the things that we think work and don't work, and like just, I guess.
I've got a few
Yeah.
tips. I would say this, and I'm going to say a few statements.
Okay.
The first is, there is no one-size-fits-all approach in life to almost anything. Why? Because each human, and this sounds like I'm joking, because I'm me, but it's really not a joke. Humans are like snowflakes. And I mean that in the actual physical sense, because all snowflakes are all made of the same stuff, H2O. It's all the same stuff. But there is no one snowflake that is similar to another. There's no two snowflakes that are identical to one another. Each one is like a unique fingerprint. Every single human being, there is no human on the face of the planet that is you, that has ever existed or will ever exist, that is like you. Exactly. So there could never be in biology a perfect one-size-fits-all approach to almost anything. Of course there are generalizations. That's what we're talking about here, right? That's anytime you hear, even if you, medical advice, all of it is, well, we did a study with an N of 127 in this population, this average age, all yada, 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 but it's never going to be perfect. So in general, you really have to collect your own data. And that's what I would push everyone to do. The questioning your biases is really about question the ways you're working, question the ways you're living, because so much of how we work and how we live is adopted from stuff we've heard on podcasts, read on blogs, right? Borrowed or observed in others, gained from society, family, culture, this, that, the other, mentors, all of it. But it may not be working for you. It may not be working for you. And there's no replacement for collecting your own data. And what I mean by that is actually collecting your own data. Sit down and work in a certain way. So like not a focus sprint, for example. Actually note what you think you can get done for the next 90 minutes. Like, what is your goal? What is your objective for the next 90 minutes? Then at the end of the 90 minutes, what did you do? And how did it go? You can track things like how many times you opened your screen, how many times you switched from one app to another, how many times you opened your email, all of that. You can track all of these things and also check in with yourself on how you feel. Like mental health, like seriously, like how busy do you feel? Or how excited and energized do you feel? And then do it a different way. Change one variable, like add like the music, and then see if that makes a difference. And then change a different variable and do that a couple of times. And then over, a couple months, you could learn quite a bit about yourself.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I feel like sometimes when I work the way you described, like the tabs open and the emails popping up, it's like I feel very stressed out. And I don't think I'm alone in that, even though, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'll just add, I think one other bias to keep in mind for pretty much all of life is that we tend to try to overcomplicate things. The world is complicated, yes, and there's lots of things to keep track of, but we often think that the solution or the method we need to be more productive or more organized is complicated. It's usually not. The simplest methods are often the most effective because you can actually follow them, you can do them consistently versus all of these new 12-step methods for organizing your email. 12 steps, nobody has time for that. It becomes way more about keeping the system running or doing all the work of the system versus the work itself. So keep it simple. And simple things like just writing down the 3 most important things for your day. If you do that every single day, and nobody does that, you're already light years ahead of other people who just hope that when they show up and they look at their to-do list and the inbox and everything that happens to them, they just hope that they're going to do the things that matter the most. And often they don't, or it gets pushed to, I'll do it at nighttime after the kids go to bed, or early in the morning, or on the weekend when you're not as distracted and the world is a little bit quieter. So keep it simple. And that goes for productivity, that goes for avoiding burnout, that goes for exercise. Pretty much any aspect of life can be simplified. Now, it doesn't mean to oversimplify. There's a fine balance here, but we tend to overcomplicate everything. And that's a barrier to doing stuff. We think that it's complicated, so I might as well not try. No, just do the one thing that makes the most sense, that's going to have a benefit. Gather that data, build some self-awareness, and then if you need more, add a second thing. Versus starting with I need 12 things, and then you get really excited for a week and then you abandon it. Because that's how new habit formation always goes. We get really excited, and then we drop off when life gets hectic or something comes in from left field.
Well, that's definitely doable, just keeping it simple, right? I love that. And it goes back to that intentionality you were talking about in the beginning. Well, this has been such a wonderful episode and so full of so many things.
As you look at me, you're like, things.
So thank you so much for taking the time to join us today on Framework. And thank you everybody else for tuning into this episode. Please subscribe so you never miss another one.